Hi there. Welcome to Bourbon Turntable. We are the show that blends the love of music with the love of whiskey. Today we have a very, very special show for you. I will have an interview with Mr. Jerry Dalton. Jerry was the master distiller at Jim Beam from 1998 until 2007, meaning that he bridged the gap between Booker Noe and Fred Noe. Jerry is actually the only non-member of the Beam family tree to hold the title of master distiller at Jim Beam. So the effort here is to get Jerry Dalton in the Kentucky Bourbon Hall of Fame. For whatever reason, he is not in that yet. And that is a wrong that should be righted. And a few years ago, I was writing for the ABV Network's Whiskey Corner blog. And Steve Akley had done a show on the Bourbon Daily and called it National Jerry Dalton Day. And I wrote a companion article for that on the blog. And late October of 2022, Jerry's daughter actually found that article and shared it with Jerry. And there were some personal health issues with Jerry's wife at the time. She subsequently passed away in December. But it created a connection between myself and Jerry and his family. And I talked with Steve and let him know what was going on with Jerry as well. And Steve and Bo Cumberland reached out to Jerry and talked with him about the effort, reigniting the effort to get him in the Kentucky Bourbon Hall of Fame. So Steve and Bo worked up a documentary. The link to that documentary will be in the show notes. It's very, very good and tells a great story about Jerry and his career, and also about Jerry and the relationship that he shared with his wife for some 60 years. So we will dispense with some of the normal preliminaries on the show this week. But please do like, share, subscribe this episode especially. And what we would like to ask you to do as a bourbon fan, as a bourbon and whiskey enthusiast, and as just a good human being, reach out to the Kentucky Bourbon Hall of Fame. And you see the email address scrolling across the screen here. It is enjoy@kybourbon.com. Enjoy@kybourbon.com. And just tell them, we think Jerry should be in the Kentucky Bourbon Hall of Fame. And as you see the interview, you'll see what the case is for that. If you go through and you watch the documentary, you will see what the case is in that as well. It is a very, very strong case. And hopefully we can get him in that Hall of Fame very soon. So I hope you enjoy the interview, and thank you. Well, Jerry Dalton was a master distiller at Jim Beam from 1998 to 2007, and is the only person not in the Beam family tree to serve in that capacity. Jerry's made great contributions to the Jim Beam distillery legacy, some of which we'll talk with Jerry about today. And in addition to his career in the whiskey industry, he is an outstanding family man and a true gentleman. Jerry Dalton, welcome to Bourbon Turntable.
What kind of, I'm sorry, say it again. What kind of?
Welcome to Bourbon Turntable.
Oh,
that's our show. Yeah.
Well, thank you.
Yeah.
I truly appreciate the opportunity.
Well, we're thrilled to have you on with us. And I want to thank Steve and Bo for the opportunity that they set up like this. And, I was trying to think what I wanted to drink during the show to toast you with and to sip on. And, you can really go back. You don't have to go back that far in what's been released to get to bottles that you distilled. So I've got, there's this bottle of Knob Creek.
Far out.
And that was a barrel date of 2004. So that had your fingerprints all over it. And this Knob Creek limited edition, a 2001 limited edition.
You got stuff there that I haven't even tasted.
Well, we can fix that. But
I can also see some stuff up on the wall there that looks vaguely familiar.
yes, there is. I've got this little gem.
Oh yeah.
I've got a few of those. Every time I see one out in the wild, I grab it. And we'll get to those in just a minute. But you started early on in your career. You ran a lab with your wife, correct? In Eastern Kentucky?
Yes, that's right.
Yeah. Now, how did that work prepare you for your time at Barton and your time at Beam?
Oh, well, I don't know. I think I was probably honing some skills, but some of the things that I knew most about, I learned actually in school. My bent toward statistical analysis came out of my academic training at the lab in Somerset, Eastern Kentucky. The skills got challenged and honed even further because I was doing environmental work, and periodically I voluntarily would take unknown samples from the EPA, and they would submit them, and you had to analyze them. And I analyzed them for the parameters that were required for my work, and demonstrated to their satisfaction that I was doing it right. I was within the statistical boundaries of what they considered to be good lab work. So,
yeah.
But all of that I brought with me to the distilling business, and it served me well.
Yeah. So, and I remember, one of the things that was brought out in the documentary, which is, very subtly titled "Get Jerry Dalton in the Kentucky Bourbon Hall of Fame." You probably had to go through a few focus groups to settle on that title, Steve. But yeah. But one of the things that was discussed in there was your advocacy for analyzing data. How did that work for you? How did that benefit you? How did you use that when you were Master Distiller at Jim Beam?
Well, I don't know if I've mentioned this before, but I had a reputation. I had a reputation at Jim Beam, and I was told, somebody in a fit of candor told me that when they trained new operators in the distillery, they told them straight out, if you spit in one of those 19,000 gallon fermenters, Jerry Dalton will know it. So, but the truth is, and I'll offer this, I don't want to take too much time, but I'll offer this as a specific example that actually happened at Barton. I am a trained Deming trainer. I was trained in statistical process control, and I was using it at Barton, actually following the analytical work that we were doing on each fermenter. And long story short, or at least a little shorter, I suddenly realized that one particular, there were like 19 fermenters, I believe, and one particular fermenter was running off more acid than the others. And when I say that, I mean statistically significantly more. It wasn't just my feeling, it was in the numbers.
Right.
And I called that to the attention of the plant engineer, and at Barton, the mash coolers, the fermenter coolers, were actually external. They were little heat exchanger pots mounted alongside each fermenter, and they cracked open the heat exchanger pot on that particular fermenter and found that purchasing had started buying a laminated gasket material, and the gasket material had delaminated in place and created little pockets, and mash would get pushed back in those pockets, and steaming wouldn't do anything to it. And the mash would sour in there and go all funky, and then contaminate the fermenter as it circulated through the cooling pot. So at that point, I had everybody convinced that I was doing some kind of witchcraft, and because I identified that, and then I said, and by the way, look at fermenters 11, 7, 5, and 3, because they're going to be the same way, and they were.
Wow.
And so they ended up changing out all the gaskets and getting rid of the laminated stuff, and everything was made all right. That's the kind of analysis that I did at Beam, and that was the outcome.
Did that prompt any changes to obviously it prompted some change to the purchasing process there. You didn't want to buy those gaskets anymore, but did it change anything else in terms of your processes or procedures, or maybe even how you distilled or your distilling manuals?
It's hard to pin down any one thing. One instance specific to Beam, and I'm not divulging anything proprietary in this, I don't think. There was some question. By the way, Kevin, hold that up again. Here's to you, sir.
Cheers.
At Beam, when I went there, they would collect samples out of the fermenters as they went to the still, and run the basic parameters, pH, acidity, and balling. And but they were collecting the samples, and the samples they collected on the second and third shift would sit in the lab until the next morning, when the lab shift came on, the day shift, and it altered the data, because they didn't just sit there. Even when you put them in the refrigerator, the fermentation process would go on, albeit slowly. And so the result was that they were getting biased data, not because they were doing the test wrong, because the samples were aging. And I advocated for and got them to do it, to let the operators, they had the capability, and it wasn't any huge big training deal, to let the operators actually run the samples as soon as they took them off the still, changed the picture. And that was a significant change, because by doing a better job of controlling acids in the fermenters, we produced a cleaner, better product.
Yeah. So you're able to identify those problems much earlier than if you just wait to the point that you're tasting it and say, well, this doesn't taste right, right?
Yeah, and that's the heart of statistical process control, is you do the QC on the process, you don't do it on the finished product. And distillation, if you make bad whiskey, there's only one thing you can do, and that's redistill it. And of course, that's dreadfully expensive.
Right.
So anything we can do to not make bad whiskey, or even make marginal whiskey, because we didn't control something, anything we do to fix that is going to make our product better and cleaner.
Yeah. Now, one of the things that you introduced at Jim Beam was this signature craft series, and this happens to be a high rye here. I think I've got a rolled oats and maybe
I can see at least two more of them, three more of them back there on the shelf.
Yeah, like I say, when I find these, I grab them, because they're different and always very good. But what led you to that type of innovation, that type of different product for a company like Jim Beam, which had, was kind of a monster, and didn't really need to, you wouldn't think they'd need to change a whole lot, but you introduced this product.
Yeah, well, luckily I didn't screw up what was at the top of the mark anyhow, but what really got me going on it is a trip to Scotland I made. They sent me over to, they were getting ready to make a push with Beam products in Scotland and England, and the sales force needed training because bourbon was a alien concept to them.
Right.
So anyhow, I'm in Scotland, and I tasted, oh hell, I drank my share of scotch while I was there. And the thing about it was I had a very limited and basically ignorant notion about scotch. I thought it was all this smoky stuff, and
Right.
I really liked it. I liked the smoky taste, but I thought that's all there was. Well, when I got to Scotland, and the boys over there were entertaining me, demonstrated to me that there was a far broader range of organoleptic properties in Scotch. So I came back to Claremont, and I said, what can we do to bourbon to give ourselves more latitude in organoleptic properties so that we can do some of that blending and maybe make some unique products? And
Right.
that's where the idea was born. I made them all capable of being, well, they were bourbons.
Right.
All of them had 51% corn or more, but they obviously, the small grains varied. And that was me just saying, okay, let's find something different than the typical rye or the typical amount of rye, and put it in there and see what happens. And that's what we did. That's where those 6 bourbons came from.
Yeah. So what may not have caught on with other distillers at that point has certainly started to catch on a lot more in the last 8 to 10 years, especially with craft distillers using oat, using rice, using triticale. When you see that type of movement in the marketplace, in what's being offered for the bourbon consumer, how does that make you feel? What do you think about that?
Well, first off, I'm vaguely surprised. It never occurred to me at the time that I might be establishing some trend in mash bills. And of course, when I was tinkering with that idea, I don't think the craft distilling had taken off anything like it has recently.
Right.
So to me, it's a bit surprising. And when somebody makes a brash statement like I was maybe the daddy of that alternate small grains, that goes from surprising to shocking. And I go, holy smoke, it's interesting that I did that, but I certainly didn't mean to.
Right. But you did. And what's, as the trends go, what you did, back in your time at Master Distiller Jim Beam has now recycled itself. Everything becomes fashionable again, I guess. But craft distillers started doing that, and now some of the bigger distillers are doing that again, namely Jim Beam. You look at some of the stuff that Freddie Noe is doing with rice, brown rice now. It harkens back to the things that you were doing 20 years earlier.
You think there's any way I can get a royalty on any of that?
Well, it never hurts to ask. So one of the things that I always find interesting about bourbon and has always appealed to me is how it plays with both the left side and right side of the brain, and it's both art and it's both science. And you seem to encapsulate that in your approach, because you have the very scientific approach and using the data driven analysis that you do, but there's also the artistic side that leads to things like this. How do you balance those two things in your mind as a master distiller?
Well, it's a complicated question, but nonetheless, I, for years, I literally tell people that I was so left brain, I was off scale, and I taught myself to be right brained. And so creatively, I don't know, you probably don't know, but I have painted. I've actually sold paintings that I did back in the 70s. I've written a book that has absolutely nothing to do with, well, that's not true. I've written a book that has tenuous connections to distilling. I'm hoping to write another one, but I don't know about that. But nonetheless, fact is, I taught myself to be creative and to some degree, and but I never lost the analytical side. So hopefully, I've got my left-brained tendencies in check enough to let my right brain tendencies do a little creation occasionally.
Do you use one side of the brain to do a check on the other? I mean,
Oh, absolutely. That's what a left-brained person. I refer to myself as a numbers dweeb, and I still am. If you challenged me on anything, I'd say, well, let me see the data and I'll get back to you.
Right.
So yeah, I am happy to have been as left-brained as I was, and happier still that I was able to interject a little bit of right-brain creativity and all that.
So let's talk a little bit about this movie. And Steve, if you and Bo have anything that you want to add, feel free. Again, the very subtle title of Get Jerry Dalton, the Kentucky Bourbon Hall of Fame. So first of all, I've watched it a couple of times, so I want to congratulate Steve and Bo on that, and thank you for doing that. I think it's a very important thing that you're leading, and of course, I offer whatever assistance I might be able to contribute in that effort. But we'll post when we when we have the show posted, we'll have a link to that documentary in there, just so everybody can easily find that. But the Kentucky Bourbon Hall of Fame, it shouldn't be about politics. It shouldn't be about money. It should be about what's your contribution to bourbon in Kentucky. And Jerry not being in the hall already, well, let's just call it an oversight for now. And but Jerry, what would it mean to you to be elected into the Kentucky Bourbon Hall of Fame?
Oh, it'd be what it's intended to be, a great honor. I never really gave it a lot of thought until Steve kicked his way into my little universe and started talking about it. And it would be truly a great honor, but I also want to say that it would be an honor on my terms, in that if I didn't feel like that I had advanced the art and the science of distilling bourbon, at least a little bit, if I didn't feel like that, I'd say, please, won't you just drop it? I don't want it. I feel like if I deserve a place there, I deserve it because I had a positive impact on the art and science of distilling.
Mhm. Yeah. Yeah. I don't think that any reasonable person could argue that you have not made that positive contribution, both on the artistic side and both on the science side of distilling bourbon in the state of Kentucky. So, uh, with that being said, I want to ask you a little bit about music, and then we may, if we have time, we'll get back to whiskey. But on our show, we always want to talk both whiskey and music. So I want to ask you, Jerry, what was the music that you were listening to when you were growing up?
Well, this is truly weird. My mother played piano professionally for all of my life, and we had a piano in our house that literally, when she was 6, they recognized her talent for playing music by ear, and her 6th birthday present was a piano that floated on a flatboat down the Barren River to Green River, and then up Green River to the landing near where they lived. And it got unloaded and hauled up to the house. And believe it was a monster. I used to be able to pick up one end of it. But anyhow, so I grew up with music in the house, and it was, as you might imagine, in Bowling Green, Kentucky in the 50s, it was country western.
Yep.
We had both kinds.
Both kinds of, yes.
So I grew up around music and around Nashville-based music. But the thing was, my mother could also read music, and she could play classical pieces if she wanted to, and she did from time to time. So I grew up listening to a broad range of music, and this is the truly weird thing. She played piano for a band called Otis Blanton and the Blue Star Rangers, and Otis with a D. And on YouTube, believe it or not, somebody has interjected an audio, and it has a still photograph, but it's of Otis Blanton and the Blue Star Rangers playing a piece, and my mother's playing the lead piano. So you can actually listen to my mother play piano and look at a picture, and I've got the picture here at the house that they have on the TV. So I thought that was truly weird. But now let me fast forward a little bit. Then we went through a lot of music, but my wife and I were enamored with folk music, like especially Peter, Paul, and Mary. One of the first concerts I ever went to was Peter, Paul, and Mary in Charlotte, North Carolina, when Christy was still awaiting to burst forth the world. So we listened to a lot of Peter, Paul, and Mary. I grew up before that liking the Kingston Trio, Something Fierce. And then as time went on, our kids became less kiddish. I went through what they went through. So I'm also familiar with Queen and my God, Elton John. I listened to all of it avidly and with an open mind. Especially John Prine.
Yes.
Really, really liked John Prine. So I have broad horizons when it comes to music over the years.
Well, John Prine was the one that Christy mentioned to me in an email, and she said that she remembered hearing John Prine's music playing all throughout the house growing up. So that makes you a good dad.
Did you
There
ever
would be
get a?
people who would want to argue that point with you, but
Well, we don't care about them. They don't know what they're talking about. So when Otis Blanton, I want to ask a question. Otis Blanton and the Blue Star Rangers. Now, was that a country and western?
oh
group?
yeah,
Yeah.
they were there and local in Bowling Green. Actually, my mother and my sister actually cut one record in Nashville, and I think it sold 18 copies. I'm not sure, but anyhow, she played. My young memories are riding up with the band and to Litchfield, Kentucky,
Mhm.
which is a tiny little place. And we'd go up to Litchfield, and there was Tony's skating rink, and they did a square dance on Saturday night. And
Yeah.
Otis Blanton and the Blue Star Rangers played the music at the square dance.
For the square
I
dance.
got to go on occasion, and that was great fun. But
Now, did you learn to square dance?
no.
It's never too late, Jerry. It's never too late.
If I'd
now.
learned to square dance, it would have been a seismic event. The University of Chicago would have been down looking for the epicenter.
Now, you said your mom was a gifted pianist. Did you play?
I'm embarrassed to tell you, I played guitar, and I'll hasten to add that the guitar is said to be an instrument that's the easiest in the world to play badly. So I played guitar, and I think I probably got to the point where I was on the low side of okay as opposed to totally bad. But nonetheless, I played guitar, and we sang a lot of folk music. Christy and Dan, my son, they have great ears and great voices, and so we sang a lot of music at our house. And plus, my brother-in-law was an accomplished musician, and my wife's nephew. So a lot of music in my upbringing and adult life.
Yeah. Is there a particular artist or group or style of music that you think this is good music to drink whiskey to?
Well, to drink whiskey with, if I had to name three groups that really appeal to me personally, it would be John Prine, Peter, Paul and Mary, and James Taylor. I actually, believe it or not, went to a James Taylor concert in Louisville in the early 60s, I think, and took my wife's nephew as a birthday present. And I didn't even know who James Taylor was, but his warm-up act, get ready, was Carole King. And so I went to a Carole King and James Taylor concert, and I was an instant fan in both instances.
There's some really strong songwriting coming out of that duo. That's fantastic. That's a great story. So what does Jerry, you've been retired for a few years now. What are some things that you would like to do getting back into the world of whiskey?
Well, I toyed with, as Steve knows, I toyed with the notion of doing some or trying to do some consulting, and I figured out that been there and done that, and I don't know if I have the drive and the capability still. I haven't gone downhill to the point where I can't do it, but I think I've gone downhill enough to know that I don't want to. But I've always enjoyed writing, and I guess in my heart of hearts, I hope that maybe I can get one more book squeezed out before I croak.
Well, somebody somewhere needs to write the story, and it's I think uh, Bo and Steve have done a really good job of putting the story on film, so to speak. But somebody needs to write the story too, and maybe that's a good autobiography that would be not only the story of your career and your life in bourbon, but also a really good love story as well, right? Yeah.
Well, yeah.
Yeah. So to let me ask you this as well. When you've got something in your glass there, you raised it up a second ago, and we toasted to that. Now, so what's in that glass? What are you drinking right now?
Right now, my son poured this for me, but knowing what my stock is, I'm drinking Jim Beam Black.
That's a good one. That's a really good one. Are there things that you think back on that you distilled or you maybe bottled during your time at Jim Beam that you think that one was a jewel? That one was really special.
Well, nothing that I can personally credit for. Apparently, in that signature series, apparently the brown rice has struck a note because I know they're pursuing that one.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm pleased with that, and I hope. And by the way, true to my standard form, I have yet to try it. I tasted it when it came off the still. I tasted the White Dog, and right before I retired, they had been in the warehouse a couple of years at that point, and I tasted them again. But I have yet to taste the current brown rice offering, and I'm looking forward to doing so. But truth is, I'm very proud of Knob Creek because not just because I like it. I'm proud of it because apparently people who really appreciate good bourbon like it. But I'm also proud of the entire small batch collection because I've said many times, and I meant it even if I hadn't been master distiller at Beam, I meant it. If you can't find something in the small batch collection that you like, you just don't like bourbon. And so anyhow, but I guess if I have to pick one, Knob Creek is the one that I am especially proud of.
Yeah. Now, how did you transition from Booker and start producing Bookers as the master distiller? How did that all work out for you and your relationship with Booker?
Oh well, I told Booker this, and I meant it absolutely seriously. I took my job as to protect the process, to make sure that it was done properly and it was done in manufacturing specifications, and to make sure that the product that came out of that effort was the product that Booker wanted it to be.
Right.
And so I did things that, like I said, would be about as exciting as watching a haircut. But I did them, and I did them for the sole purpose of making sure that that process did what it was supposed to do.
Right.
I thought that was my job as master distiller, pure and simple.
Right. But without that, a lot of people have the very celebrity notion that master distillers go around all day looking at glasses like this, and you know, but if you're truly a master distiller, if you're truly active in that distillation process, you're getting your pants dirty every day, and you're out in the rick houses, and you're tasting from barrels, and you're in with the fermenters, and you're looking at data like you did, right?
Right. And in that context, you're probably looking at a master distiller who has knocked apart more used barrels than any other master distiller, I'd be willing to bet. I've also knocked apart probably $20,000 worth of brand new barrels to check the manufacturing quality. I'm probably the only master distiller afoot who knows what Fick's law of diffusion is. I have delved into the process, and you talk about getting dirty. One of my early memories when I first went into the business at Barton was Barton wasn't running at that point. They made limited runs of bourbon, and but the industry had an industry-wide problem. So I spent several hours with Parker Bean crawling around in the top of the old Heaven Hill distillery and saying, maybe that over there ain't right. And so, yeah, I've been plenty dirty, plenty of times.
Well, whatever you did, it's paid off, and you are very much deserving of the honor of being elected to the Kentucky Bourbon Hall of Fame.
Well, thank you.
And I know that part of what this conversation is about is geared towards that direction, and that is absolutely what I want. And I think that anybody that is has any kind of knowledge about what your contributions are, and knowledge about what the bourbon industry in general is about, they're behind that too. But as we're getting a shorter on time, I did want to just say it is a personal honor to have this opportunity to have this conversation with you, Jerry. And I have a great deal of respect for you as a distiller and what you've accomplished there, but also as a true gentleman. So
the distiller I've been charged with many times. A gentleman, I'm not so sure, but I'll take it. But let me say this, and I've given this thought ever since this came up. If I should be honored, and if I'm not, it's okay, because it won't alter the fact that I made some good whiskey. But if I should be honored, I will accept the honor only partially on my own behalf. I'll accept it on behalf of the people who showed up day after day and made good whiskey.
Yeah.
I think that, if you watch the movie, the funny thing is it is titled, it's in your face, the title, Get Jerry Dalton in the Bourbon Hall of Fame. The takeaway is we really can't influence that. We there's no real road to get Jerry in there unless bourbon fans decide to step up and help out. And that's why I would encourage people to send an email to enjoy@kybourbon.com and just say Jerry deserves a place in the Hall of Fame. He's done so much for the industry, and that's hopefully a takeaway from the movie, that you can as an individual help. And then the other thing is the love story. I mean, in reality, while our goal is to tell the story of Jerry and his legacy and his contributions to the bourbon industry, I think that the love story is the important thing, and that is even bigger than getting into the Bourbon Show Hall of Fame. The fact that here's a man who loved his wife so much he dedicated his life to taking care of her, and I think that is something that you'll see in this movie. So you may be surprised if you watch this. It's probably a different movie than you think it's going to be based on the title, which is kind of the intention of the whole thing.
Yeah.
So,
All right. Well, Jerry, again, I want to thank Steve and Bo for the opportunity here to talk with you, and thank you, Steve and Bo, for setting this up and for thinking of me and our show. Jerry, I look forward to a time when maybe we can share a drink together. But
Absolutely.
I do have one last question. When it finally happens and you are inducted in the Bourbon Hall of Fame, what are we drinking to celebrate?
Well, I'd be happy if you wanted to make the choice, but there's a box over here that was made by my brother-in-law, who's was a master craftsman in wood. He was a design genius, but it's a box, and it is capable of holding 2 bottles of Knob Creek.
Mhm.
And one of them has been opened and consumed on a occasion, but the other one, if I get inducted into the Hall of Fame and can have the good fortune to have people like you and Steve gathered around in the same place at the same time, we'll open that other bottle.
heck yeah, we will.
Yes. All right. Well, Jerry, cheers to you, sir. Thank you very much, and God bless you.
Thank you, Kevin.
So I hope you enjoyed listening to that interview half as much as I enjoyed doing it. Jerry's a fantastic guy and a wonderful part of bourbon history, especially in the state of Kentucky, but really around the world. If you look at all the different things that he has accomplished and been a part of, the case is very, very strong for him to be in the Kentucky Bourbon Hall of Fame. So again, we ask that you email them at enjoy@kybourbon.com. Tell them what you think. Tell them that you believe that Jerry should be in the Kentucky Bourbon Hall of Fame, because there's no reason that he isn't. Well, I could speculate, but I won't now. But hope that you can do this to help Jerry out. He certainly deserves it, and we would appreciate it as well. So until next time, cheers, love, and free bird. Good night.